Welcome along, everybody, to the Toffee Blues, and welcome back once again to the Toffee Blues podcast. I'm Harry. I am in for Alex this week as your host and your guide through all things Everton and what has been happening over the last week. Joining me once again on the pod is Callum. Welcome back to the pod, Callum. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm pretty good. Yeah, nice weather for once, which is nice. So
Yeah.
getting to enjoy that. So and we know we're getting to talk positively about Everton again mainly. So which is always a good thing.
I know. I don't know how Alex did this at the beginning of the season. I'll be very honest with you. But yeah, it's been great to be able to kind of jump at the chance to talk about Everton at the moment. And we are in the midst of an international break. We were talking just before we started the pod today about both of us really kind of having a mutual lethargia for international football. And we're going to talk a little bit about international break a little bit later on in the pod, but I think where we're going to start on today's show is just to kind of recap. I mean, it feels like ages ago, but the 1-1 draw of West Ham's trip to Goodison Park. Now, I was listening back to last week's pod, and I believe you called 1-1. So I take my hat off to you. Congratulations on having the right levels of pessimism on the show last week.
Yeah, I just felt like it was going to be one of those games, and I did think we were going to dominate majority of the chances. I guess we did, but it felt very much a bit lethargic, a bit like a bit more Dyche than what we've seen under Moyes. Of course, Moyes isn't exactly the most offensive manager,
Yeah.
but it was just one of those where I just think West Ham have a lot more quality than us across the board. You look at the money they've spent, you look at the actual quality in the squad. It was bound to happen when it turned into a game of what it was, which just felt like bounce back and forth, and someone needed to take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I just think our attack was, besides Alcaraz, just so lethargic and felt slow. Beto feels like in the past two games that he's sort of regressed back to what he was under Dyche,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because it looks like he's still getting the chances, but then he's just not like his duels. He's not winning any of them. Decore is just, I like Decore, but the I'm to put it simply, I'm glad we're going to have McNeil and Die back soon.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, obviously there's signs, isn't there? I know that there's been stuff on X or Twitter over the last couple of days that McNeil's returned to light training. So potentially after the international break, we might see him back in the squad, perhaps maybe not in the starting 11. I'll tell you what though, Callum, the one big positive that I took from the West Ham game was the fact that we actually had a bench for once. It felt like
Yeah,
he actually had substitutions and options that he could take from the bench that weren't just Ashley Young. I know one of the big substitutions that he made and the fans seem to get very excited about was the return of Yusuf Chamiti. It's the first time he's featured in a Premier League side this season for Everton. How did you feel about his kind of cameo? Because I think what I'm trying to compare this to is when Broja first started coming on off the bench for Everton when his loan deal started. It looked like this something different that the fans really bought into. And I'm wondering, I don't want to go too early on my Chimity hype, but how did you feel about his appearance at the weekend?
yeah, it was really promising. It's one of those where I feel like Chamiti, you have our little Everton group chat. I feel like Chamiti's one of those that's got positives just because of the names they've been calling him the Terminator. So immediately he's become he hasn't played a game, and that one nickname when he came off the bench, all the people who were in the group chat were getting hyped at the time just for the fact that we were seeing him, and I think he looked really good. Really solid on the ball, very similar to Broyer in the sense that he's very big, but he's not a lump it up to him striker. He's one where you play it to his feet. Really technically gifted, but does have the frame as well to become a really solid player in terms of holding the ball up and getting involved. I do hope he's given more than 10-minute cameos after this. I think he looked. It's hard to say. I think he looked better than Broyer, I'd say, but Broyer's got a little bit more experience in the Premier League. I feel like Chamiti is one where I want to see him for the rest of the season being given 20, 30 minutes if the strikers aren't there, because at the end of the day, with Broyer's not our player, and I'm going to be really honest, shouldn't be our player at the end of the season. Not ability wise, he probably is. If you could get a full season of Broy, you could probably say he's worth 25, 30 million, whatever we have to pay Chelsea. But the matter of fact is, he's made of glass, and
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
unfortunately, it just doesn't mean he's worth the money. But Chamiti looks like someone with a lot of talent. Looks like someone who we should be looking at next season be given more starts this season, maybe been given more starts. I think I like Beto, but again, I'm probably still now on the page of we still need a number one striker in the summer, and that means I am open to seeing Beto go, to be honest. But it has only been 2 games. I don't want to dig too much on Beto because you're going to have bad games. And against West Ham, who came to play defense, it's weird because I think at the start of the game, I think it looked a lot more like Graham Potter was the manager managing Everton and David
Yeah.
Moyes was the ones that, because it felt like we were going at them, trying to break them down. And we almost did quite a few times at the start. And I think it was um, an impressive start to the game. But I think eventually, I think the first half overall was really good. But then I think when I was running the Twitter, I used the classic tale of two halves because the second half we just got battered. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Chimity overall to get back to that really solid cameo and has got me excited for hopefully his next appearance.
So look, we said I did make a promise to all of our fellow Toffee Blue contributors that I wouldn't start talking about the Merseyside derby because we are in, as we said at the start, in the midst of an international break. But very quickly, I am going to put this question to you. We look like going into that Merseyside derby in a couple of weeks from now that we're going to have Broja, Chimiti, and Beto as three fully fit strikers that could play and could start in that Merseyside derby. Right now, who would you want to start out of those three? And is that different to who you think Moyes will start out of those three?
Um, I think I think the right choice is still Beto. I think he can give he'll have a lot of success against Liverpool. They love to play that high line. You've seen when they get tested by a striker willing to be physical. Even Alexander Isak's not the most physical striker in the sense of that he's not going to, put his shoulder against you and smash into you like someone like bloody some old target men. But I feel like he's going to cause a lot of problems. I feel like it feels like every time I see Beto play against Canate as well, which I don't think has happened too much, but I feel like Canate is one where he'll struggle. I just think Liverpool in general felt a little bit against Newcastle anyway, and against PSG, felt a little fragile at the back and felt
Yeah.
like that pace can really do them in. But that's the problem. Is I mean, Bettel's not slow by any means, but I think he's the right choice. I think he's earned it under Moyes, and I think 2 bad games doesn't suddenly mean the end of the world. I think he deserves it. But I think honestly, I think if we get to 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and Beto's struggling, then I think yeah, Chimiti should be brought on straight away. If we're not getting absolutely hammered, which I'd hope we're not. I know Liverpool are very good side, but the one thing I will say that I expect from this David Moyes team now is I expect us to at least be competitive
Yeah.
in every game we play. It doesn't matter if we were playing Real Madrid. I'd expect us to at least, stay in the game. May lose 2, even 3-0 at the end, but I'd expect it to be we're going to go for it. We're going to stay in for as long as we can, and we might nick something from it, which I do think we can. Last time we won at Anfield was COVID.
Yeah, it was the COVID years
Yeah,
under Ancelotti. Yeah.
so it's not impossible, and I mean the it's the same thing. The defense, Liverpool's defense has shown over the past few years that it kind of slips and it kind of these down moments. I'm not one of the Everton fans that downplays Van Dijk or anything, but at the end of the day, it's one of those where we're going to have to take advantage of it. We're going to be fully rested. They're also going to be probably less fully rested than us in the sense that they've got a lot of internationals. I can
Yeah.
imagine. So we should have the advantage in terms of rest, in terms of fitness, but I think they're going to just have it in terms of more match readiness than us. But we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But I am again cautiously optimistic for the game.
Yeah, and we'll obviously preview it in more detail on the next pod that we do. I think it is just sort of worth mentioning, I would completely agree with you. And also I expect that David Moyes will go with Beto up top. And I think you're right, a couple of bad games. We didn't suddenly expect him to turn into like this sort of Jamie Vardy in the Leicester Premier League winning team where he was going to go on a run of like 10, 12 games, scoring in every game. And I also don't think, necessarily necessarily. It was interesting for me in the build up to the Wolves game. He was quite critical, Moyes, that is, of the supply from the wings, and this sort of inability to get the right ball in the box. And we know that Beto is a player that does need pretty decent service in order to stand a chance of getting on the score sheet. But yeah, I would expect him to come on, and I would expect his performances to get increasingly better now. Off the back of that Chimiti cameo, I think he will look over his shoulder now and realize that he was very much the striker in the team out of necessity when Moyes first came in, and now that necessity has gone, he will have players that want his position, not just for the rest of this season, but also next season. Because I also echo what you said. I think he will have to, or we will have to go into the market for a first team quality striker if one of those exists in the price kind of range that Moyes is prepared to spend, or the club's prepared to spend. But Beto's going to go back to having a slightly different point to prove, I think, after the international break. But we'll park that one there, and we'll talk about from someone who should be scoring goals to somebody that is scoring goals, and that is the man who has very much come out of the wilderness in Jake O'Brien. In from the cold under David Moyes and playing at right back. And I do believe we sort of touched on the last pod about players that have improved under Moyes, and Jake O'Brien definitely being in that conversation. He's popped up again here with another last minute equaliser. A couple of questions on Jake O'Brien for you, Callum. The first one being, if everything was to go to plan with recruitment over the summer, do you see Jake O'Brien in David Moyes' starting 11 come the opening game of the season? And if so, where does Jake O'Brien play?
Yeah, and centre back. Tarkowski's been uh, he's just not been good. I don't want to like put hyperbole and say terrible, but he's not been good. And he's massively now going to live this entire season off that one goal against Liverpool.
Yeah.
He's been terrible. He's constantly out of position. He redeems it, and the thing is, he's really good at blocking the ball. He's really good at getting in the way, and he'll throw himself in front of the ball. It's like he's a very good centre back. I can't deny it. He's been very good for us in the past. He was very good at Burnley. He's not a bad. It's not like Michael Keane, where Michael Keane is just a bad centre back in the nicest way possible. Darkos, a good centre back having a bad season. But the thing is, O'Brien is, if we can keep Bramford and he signs this new contract extension, which I don't know if he has already, but I don't think so, till
No, I think
2029.
it's still on the table. Yeah, I think it's still on
But
the table.
by the sounds of it, Jacob Bramford is happy to sign the contract.
Yeah.
He's well worth 100 grand a week. He is, because let's face the fact, you're not going to 100 grand a week for one of the best centre backs in the league. Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
By next season, after he's played by the 25-26 season, he'll be getting offers from Man City and the biggest clubs in the world for 250, 300 grand a week. So if we can get him for an extra season, because don't get me wrong, I don't expect to keep him in the long term, unless he is just like Pickford, where he's just like, yeah, this is good enough for me.
Yeah.
And as long as we can, rise up the league with him. But at the end of the day, O'Brien's young. He's got all the aspects what David Moyes loves from a centre back. He's, tall. It proves he's good in the air. I guess and I have noticed that ever since, I'll have to have a look at it if I just take a click on him, but it felt like he touched the ball. It must have been up there for on our team the most. It had to have been.
Mm.
Yeah, 67 touches on the ball, 11 passes into the final for, 85% pass accuracy. He can clearly play out from the back. And if we want to rise up the league, we're not going to be able to play this sit back, counter attack football and finishing 6th, 7th if we want to. We could probably do that against the big teams, but we're going to need to learn how to take it to the teams. And part of that's playing out of the back. Tarkowski is miserable at that.
Yeah.
I genuinely think he could, if you gave him like 10 attempts to play 15-yard pass, I think he'd only do it about 3 times, which is weird because he's quite good at playing those long over the top balls over to the striker. But the normal ball at your feet, play it short, he's not very good at. O'Brien clearly is, because he's at right back and he's excelling, and he's arguably our best creative outlet on the wing without the players that we have. And if
Mm.
we're not counting Alcaraz as a win, because I think Alcaraz was very good again. But yeah, I just think there's no way you don't start him next season. And he's not a right back. He's not playing bad there, but eventually, let's face the facts, we've seen him struggle at right back under Moyes in a few games. You put him in against an elite left winger. I'm trying to think of one in the Premier League, but I genuinely can't think of one. There's not one really coming to my mind. But you put him against a top level left winger, or if you've got a team that's smart, they might swap wingers, and all of a sudden O'Brien's marking some really good right winger, and I'm not expecting him to go against bloody. I'm going to use an example. I'm going to say an Eden Hazard type player.
Yeah.
I can't imagine O'Brien going against one of them, and he's going to get twisted out of his boots, and it's not his fault. It's because he's a big 6'6" centre back. You can't expect him to go one on one with players. Do you know what? If he plays right back next season and proves me wrong, then I don't know how we've signed him for as cheap as we have, because I think it's one of Branthwaite's best aspects is his ability to almost keep level with these smaller, more diminutive, tricky players. It's probably his best aspect, because a lot of centre backs struggle with that, and for example, it's what makes Van Dijk so good. Is
Yeah.
his just ability to keep his footing, something that simple. But I just think he has. I wouldn't be against him playing right back. I do see Moyes moving to a three at the back, to be
Mm.
honest with you, because I could really see it, because I just think our fullbacks aren't great. I think all of a sudden having three centre backs, and then Idrissa Gueye sitting in front of them, all of us, and it won't surprise me if he ends up moving it to. It can move to a back four in game if Mikalenko stays, or we get a wing back. Because even in January, it looked like Moyes was looking at a lot of players that had fit a wing back role,
Yeah.
the players that we were linked with in those positions. So it wouldn't surprise me. And again, I'd be really happy with that back three with Tarkowski in the middle, maybe the other two with a bit more pace and a bit more license to get forward if they need. But yeah, O'Brien has to be starting next season, because unless he has a monumental fall off in this last, um, what is it, like 8, 9 or so games? There's
Yeah, I
not
was
that
gonna
many
say
left, I
it's not
don't
that
think.
many games. Is I think 8 games now at this point.
Yeah. So I think he's locked his position in next
Yeah.
season. So it's just one of, does Branthwaite stay, for example? Because then, of course, if Branthwaite goes, I think O'Brien. Honestly, I think if let's say we get 70 mil for Branthwaite, I don't even think I'd look at another centre back.
No.
I'd maybe bring a squad option in, a rotation option, but then I'd be happy with Tarkowski or Bryan. Then all that money could get spent on like a right back, another winger, probably another striker. The positions that we've loaned in that we're probably going to need more of. So yeah, I think. But yeah, to get my long tangent over, Jacob Bryan should 100% be in the starting 11 next season.
It's good to see that there's players now in our squad that we can talk that passionately about, though, Callum, because I think for me, probably at the beginning of the season, under the previous manager, we would have sat here and reviewed that squad. And if you'd have said, right, and we're going to play a version of this later, but kind of like sell or keep, I think we would have probably been sitting there saying, get rid of most of them. I think it was getting beyond sort of a knee-jerk territory. We probably would have said, is there anybody in this squad that has stepped up and fought for the badge or fought for the club, or fought for our league position? And I think Jake O'Brien very much epitomizes several aspects of Moyes' management that I think is something that will stand him in great stead for as long as David Moyes is at the club. I think his versatility. We know that David Moyes, from his first spell, he loves a player that can play multiple positions. So knowing already that Jake O'Brien has taken like a duck to water to this right back role, obviously you're absolutely right. If we end up against anyone in elite form down that left hand side, he might be in for a tough day at the office. But he did all right against a possibly very out of form Son at Spurs, sort of early in that role. But I do think, yeah, you're right. He will move towards a centre back. But I also think he epitomises that kind of never say die attitude as well. It's 2 times now we've seen him get last minute goals for Everton. He loves it. He just, for such a big man, he really does go unnoticed getting into the box. I think players do really struggle to see where he is, which I don't quite understand as someone for his
I,
height and
I think a
his
lot of it is
stature.
just, I think he's just really deceptively quick, which is
Yeah.
really surprising. But I think the one thing for me as a big football manager nerd and stuff like that is just the idea of, let's say Tarkowski is dropped for O'Brien. the idea that our centre back partnership would be two fantastic centre backs who are 22 and 23 years old, who have Branthwaite 2 years of Premier League experience, O'Brien a full season of Premier League experience. You don't. There's not. I don't think there's many centre back partnerships that are young. Bournemouth maybe because they've got that Spanish lad who's like 12, but I can't. I genuinely can't. I can't think of many other centre back partnerships that young. And it's just again, it's one of those where if we can push up the league and suddenly go back to maybe best of the rest team, all of a sudden you can look at that and maybe let's say we are the seventh, eighth best team in the league around there, consistently fighting for a Conference League spot. Then you sit and think, oh well, what reason do they have to go unless a top club goes for them? And then all of a sudden, you're thinking about, oh, is that realistically in an ideal world where we go up the league and we are progressing and we somehow stay at the level to keep those two players, there is a genuine world where Branthwaite and O'Brien could be the partnership if they're not sold for 10 years.
Yeah, oh for sure, and that I think is absolutely spot on. But weirdly, I might get criticised in the comments for this one, Callum. But I think it's going to be a lovely problem for Everton to have to finally have some young, informed players that the bigger teams want. Because there will be fans that are listening to this right now that lived through the Rooney saga where he went to Man United. We all lived through the Anthony Gordon debacle. I wouldn't necessarily call it a saga. We've sat there and watched it with John Stones, Joleon Lescott, Jack Rodwell. There's a lot of names that we could go through here where we've gone, gosh, could we not just kind of keep them for another couple of years and see? But I think in recent years, our problem has been we have struggled to get rid of players that aren't quite at the level that we want to be at. And I think, with someone like a Jake O'Brien, with the Jared Branthwaite, we have some sellable assets there that will every week will be playing to get better, to either solidify Everton's league position and improvement, or as you say, that the putting himself in the shop window is not necessarily a bad thing if it means that we get great performances out of them. So we shall see what next season brings. And we've got a couple of items on the pod to talk about now that very much ties into how Everton look next season. And as I teased earlier, we are going to play a game of, as I think every Everton podcast is doing right now, by the way, but we're going to play a game of sell or keep, or out expire their contract and keep. We'll do that a little bit later. But the shorter kind of topic here is to look at Harrison Armstrong. So I think every Everton fan has watched Harrison Armstrong's goal from his loan spell at Derby, his first senior career goal that he scored last weekend. I think I've probably watched it the same number of times as I watched the Tarkowski goal, to be perfectly honest with you. But he seems to be doing well. Derby fans seem to be really taking to him. So my next question to you, Callum, is does he start Harrison Armstrong next season, or would you expect him to be out on another loan next year?
Uh, well, the advantage of this is I went to university in Derby, so 90% of my university friends are Derby fans. So I can give you a um, bit of insight on it. Derby fans are saying a lot of them are confused how he's so good and no one's heard of him besides us. A lot of them are like, I don't get it. Like, how is he playing so well? Like, if I just have a little click on here, he's played 7 matches and is averaging a 7.09 in around 400 minutes since he moved to in February. So let's say since March, it's been 7.4 against Middlesbrough, 7.3 against Blackburn, 7.7 against Coventry, and an 8 against Plymouth where he scored. All those ratings prior, that's his first goal or assist. So he's getting these ratings without contributing to goals as well.
Wow.
And the thing is, Blackburn less so recently. I don't, because Ismail's come in and they've not been very good. But Coventry and Middlesbrough, Coventry especially, are the form team in the Championship right now, ironically under Frank Lampard.
Yeah.
They are the form team in the Championship. Could easily see them coming up. Armstrong's come in ever since being given cameos against Norwich, Oxford, QPR, and then not playing against Millwall. Eustace has brought him in with Adams, and I don't know if it's Thompson playing consistently, but him and Adams specifically have basically changed the dynamic of the team. And now I think a lot of Derby fans have suddenly got a little bit of leaf of maybe we can stay up. Would he start next season? He would have to come in and be amazing. That's
Mm,
my thing because I think realistically we have to sign Alcaraz.
yeah.
Um, and for me, if he plays the 4-2-3-1, it's McNeil, Alcaraz, and Dye, and behind the striker, maybe Armstrong drops in and Dye plays up front. If you just want stupid creativity around, but I think Armstrong, honestly, he's not an attacking midfielder. I think we need to be from what I'm seeing at Thingy. I think he would fit ironically into where the role James Garner's playing
Okay.
and would offer really good cover there. I don't think we should loan him out. Maybe one more full loan in the championship. I wouldn't be against. But honestly, I'd be happy to keep him around, coming off the bench every game, occasional starts, because we know Garner's got his own injury problems. But I think he should be in and around the first team next season, playing practically every cup game, playing some games in the league, and having an impact on our team. Because I think the only way we loan him out again is if, for example, maybe an Ipswich want him or something like that on
Yeah.
loan. A manager could really develop him like a Kieran McKenna if McKenna doesn't leave Ipswich, of course, something like that, or a Southampton or a team that's going to be up there. It would be the only team I'd loan him out. So I think he deserves a shot. He's been impressive. He was impressive whenever he played for us, I think. And now he's gone to Derby and been maybe that since he's gone their second best player
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
their best. It's him or again, it's him or Adams. It's take a pick between them, but he's been absolutely fantastic and deserves all the plaudits in the world because let's not forget he's 18 and he
Yeah.
only turned 18 at the end of last year, the start of this year. We don't get prospects like that. We don't in our academy. They don't come around,
Oh.
and I think
Yeah.
it's
So,
one of those where I very much see him being. Yeah, I don't think this is a crazy comparison to make. It's not like his career's exploded or anything ever since he left us. But I really see him being Moyes' new version of someone like a Ross Barkley. I really see
it's a
something
good
similar to that.
comparison. Yeah. I
And
like
I could
that.
see a very similar career path, potential wise, in a sense that he really does have the ability to go to a top club. Hopefully not for 15 million,
Yeah.
but it's one of those where I think he needs to be in and around the first team next season. But I wouldn't be against another loan.
Yeah, I think a lot of the topics that we're talking about today very much do come down to the recruitment, right? I think it would not surprise me to see Harrison Armstrong in and amongst the preseason squad. It wouldn't surprise me to see him on the bench on the opening day of the season. Whether he's still at Everton come the close of the summer transfer window, I think it will very much depend on where David Moyes wants to put the money that he seems to now have the control to spend. I don't necessarily think that Harrison Armstrong's position or positions is where that money is going to be spent. I think there are other positions on the park
Yeah,
where that money's going to go. So
unless like a top quality defensive midfielder is available, and I'm talking like top quality is in good enough to play for a top six side and will somehow sign for Everton. Good because we have Gay, we have Garner, we have Iroben, who looks very good whenever he cameos as well, and we have Armstrong potentially. You have Iroben who can play in Gay's role. You have Armstrong who can play in Garner's role. We have easy replacements there necessary. We have two in the position. Moyes may want a bit more security, a bit more experience, but again, um, I have no reason to think Idrissa Gueye is going to fall off a cliff next season. He's been fantastic this season. I have no.
he
He's
has.
probably going to break his tackles, his best tackles. So I have no reason to think that that's suddenly going to fall off a cliff. And yeah, I just think let's say in a lovely world, the Friedkins go, here you go, David. There's 100 million big ones for you to spend because Ipswich are spending 150 mil. If
Yeah,
we're not
yeah,
FFP anymore, we should be. I expect minimum 100. To be honest with you, if we want to climb up the league, because unfortunately you have to put a lot of money in, and FFP rules are a little bit different now. So I feel like there should be money there to spend. But I just think there's way more priority positions. Striker, I'd like a winger on both sides, if I'm being honest with you, because we have no winger depth either, really. Um, but I'd be happy with fullbacks in both positions, left and right back. Another centre back, I think we need better cover than Mason Holgate and Michael Keane. I think
Ooh,
genuinely defensive midfield is the last position I'd want a player in.
That's true. Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, what we have to remember, of course, and as we said earlier and teased earlier, this is a topic that is very much across the Everton fan base, and any Everton outlet right now is talking about this in terms of the squad for next season. We have a lot of players that are out of contract. We, of course, have four or I think even five loan signings right now that we need to debate whether we're going to activate any potential buy-in clauses or whether we're going to terminate the loans, let them go back to their parent clubs. We then also have several first team players that are out of contract. Some we've already talked about, the likes of Doucouré. There are others here on that list where we need to very much look at whether or not the club are offering contracts. And I think the overwhelming consensus right now is that we cannot let every single one of these players go because you have to have a squad. And even if, like you say, you get 100 million quid to spend in the summer, that is not going to get you a squad. And what you want is to already have a squad that you can inject some quality into. So, with that in mind, what we're going to do here, Callum, is run through those players that are out of contract at the end of this season. And we're very simply going to do a name, and you're going to tell me whether you would let them go or whether you would keep them for at least another season. So, we'll start off with the one that I think we talked about on last week's pod, which is Abdoulaye Doucouré. We'll give the context here that it does look like whilst we're not triggering the option to have an extra year on his current terms, it does look like it's being renegotiated. So, at a renegotiated rate, Callum, Abdoulaye Doucouré, does he stay or does he go?
Um, I'm trying not to think in terms of the money he makes now. I think he's on 130 now.
Yeah.
If he's silly enough to go, I'll take 65. Yeah, okay. I'll give him another year. But genuinely anything more than 50% of what he's making now, no, he's been terrible this season. He's arguably been our worst player. And that is mental when Jack Harrison plays for this team. It's like I love Decore, and I say this every time I give him a bit of crap because I love him. He loves the club. He's the thing is, I think the thing about him is I probably want him to just stay around because you don't really get players with an engine like that.
Yeah.
And do you know what? If he was playing in defensive midfield, I don't think we'd really be giving him crap. But it's the fact that he's that number 10, where when he was that number 10 under Dyche and under other managers, his entire job was just chase the centre back, chase the centre back,
Yeah.
chase the centre back, shoot, because our strikers weren't scoring. All of a sudden, we've actually got a decent striker, we've got decent creative outlets around. Decore is just a player where he's very reliant on just run, 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 run. And that's not worth like 80 grand a week.
No, it's true. I'm with you. I would say keep him if the club agree favourable terms. I would say keep him. But if not, yeah, I'd let him go. Let's talk. This is alphabetical, the list I've got in front of me. So spoilers there now, because I think everyone will know what's coming next. But Ashley Young, does he stay or does he go?
I'd let him stay. I think he's been pretty good whenever
Absolutely
he's
the
played this
same.
season.
Yeah,
Rotation wise, can play left back and right back off the bench. Like, let's say we sign a left back and a right back. He's third choice left back and third choice right back, more than likely. He's probably not getting paid that much. He's a good leader, whatever around. He's proven he's willing to work the way he's turned his form around this season when he was playing. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll happily keep him for another year. And I could probably see him going into a coaching role under like Moyes or something, under the under 18s or something similar like that. Really
Yeah.
led back. Yeah, I'd keep him. I think he's a good name to have around. And again, if he's your third choice left back or your third choice right back, you're not really going to complain.
No, I absolutely agree. Great pedigree. Clearly very much like Idrissa Gana Gay, very much fitness wise can still play at that level. So yeah, I would say the same keep. Asmir Begovic, the forgotten man at Everton Football Club. Does he stay? Does he go?
He probably stays. Is he not a coach now as well?
No, he's technically third choice goalkeeper right now behind João Virginia.
Um, yeah, I'd keep him as third choice goalkeeper. He's our Rob Green, our Scott Carson. And the fans like him. I don't think
Yeah.
he should be our backup goalkeeper. I do think we should have a look at. I don't know if maybe a Harry Tyra is ready. Is it Tyra who's at Blackpool?
Yes, yeah, it's Tyro right now that's at
Yeah, so
Blackpool.
if Tyra
Yeah.
has had a good season at Blackpool, maybe he comes in as second choice. But I think Yeah, as a third choice goalkeeper, I don't think he should be a backup. I think if we don't think Tyra or one of the youth lads are good enough to be backup, then we should be looking at getting a keeper in on a free as the backup. But as a third
Yeah.
choice goalkeeper, he's probably on pennies. Good name to have around the young lads like Tyra. He's clearly a good influence. Yeah, I'd keep him. I'm saying
So
keep to more than I expected.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was expecting a little bit more on the sell side. We've still got a long list to work through here, and we're slowly running out of time. So what we'll do here is we'll do a bit of a quick fire round. So
Yeah.
we'll do the loan players just to kind of understand whether we'd be looking to make any of these permanent. So I guess I kind of know your thoughts on this already based on comments that have been made throughout the podcast so far. But Armando Broja, is he staying or is he going?
I'd let him go again, unless Chelsea are really willing to slap. If they're willing to half that 30 million they want because of the like 15 million, happily pay that for Broya,
Yeah.
but not 30 mil.
No, no, completely agree. And then let's group the other lone players together here. So you've got Jack Harrison, Jesper Lindstrom, technically still Oriol Mangala, and then we also know that Charlie Alcaraz is also currently on loan with an option to buy. So you got Harrison, Lindstrom, Mangala, and Alcaraz. Who out of those, if any, are you going to keep next season?
I'd shoot Jack Harrison out of a cannon. I'd if we can get Lundstrom for cheaper, I know it's 18 million. Again, if we could say, would you take 10 million Napoli? I know people don't like Lundstrom. It'd be silly to say he's not worth 10 million pounds.
Yeah,
As a squad option as well, I like Lundstrom. I don't know why, because he hasn't really. I think he's been okay under Moyes. I think using just goals and assists as a metric is it's not going to work when the strikers aren't really performing very well. And I mean, look at how many assists would Lindstrom have if Beto weren't missing sitters at the start.
true. Yeah, it's
You
true.
know, it's one of those. Mangala, if we again, I know he's Tories ACL, but if we go to Leon and say between 5 and 10 million, again, happily, I
Yeah,
think
agreed.
Mangala was really good before he left. And
Yeah,
as a rotation option, it would probably mean Armstrong has to go out on loan again, which I wouldn't prefer, but I wouldn't mind that. And then Alcaraz signed the contract now at this
yeah,
moment. I think he's fantastic and should be. But yeah, the only one would really be against bringing back is Harrison. Even if Leeds
agreed.
paid us, I wouldn't want Harrison.
Yeah, agreed. And then our final players that are still under contract currently: Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Idrissa Gana-Gueye, and Seamus Coleman and Michael Keane are the ones remaining. So again, out of
Mm.
those, who do you think's going to be there next season?
Calvert-Lewin can go. I'm done with the guy now. Again, another player that I love, but let's face it, I'd much rather focus on developing Chamiti. I'd rather not pay Calvert-Lewin 100 grand a week to score 6 goals a season. And yeah, Michael Keane can go. He's one where he might get looked on a bit fondly when he leaves because I actually don't think at the start of his tenure with us he was actually pretty good.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think it
agree.
kind of fell apart when we started falling apart
Yeah,
because even under Ancelotti he was quite good. So, but ever since COVID he's been absolutely terrible. And again, you feel like he might get not like cult hero status in sense of some of the good cult heroes like Stephen Pienaar and stuff, but like he'll be one of those where there's like an Ichibi. There's going to be fond memories of him for
yeah.
no reason, but they're going to be there. And then Seamus Coleman, you've got to resign him. It's a crime to not resign Seamus Coleman. He needs to end his career with Everton, and
Yeah,
I genuinely think fans might riot if we let him go.
would
And he
agree.
doesn't retire, and he goes and plays for another team.
Would agree. And that's a good point to end the pod on. So make sure you like and subscribe to Toffee Blues on YouTube, on X, and we will see you again very soon. From Callum, from myself, Harry. Bye for now, and up the Toffees.